Keeping meat edible long-term without a refrigerator might seem unthinkable, but for the Amish, it's woven into the fabric of their daily routine. Believe me, once you grasp these time-honored techniques, you'll view your refrigerator in a completely new light. You might even find yourself equipped with a contingency plan for the next time the power goes out. Before electricity became commonplace in the 1930s, roughly 90% of American homes relied on these very preservation practices. And consider this, during the scarcity of World War II, the government actually dispatched people to Amish communities to acquire knowledge of their food conservation methods. Talk about returning to basics. What truly impresses me, though, is how these methods generate absolutely no waste. There's no plastic wrap, no electricity consumption, and no chemical additives. Just unadulterated natural preservation techniques that have weathered the passage of time. As my Amish neighbor once remarked, we didn't create sustainable living, we simply never ceased practicing it. Let's begin with reliable old salt, the original food preserver, and quite possibly the reason you're here today. Seriously, your great-great-grandparents likely owed their very existence to this ordinary mineral found on your dining table. In their era, salt wasn't merely something you might oversprinkle on your fries. It held value equivalent to its weight in gold. Indeed, Roman soldiers often received payment in salt, which is the origin of our word salary. Imagine receiving a salty paycheck. Allow me to recount my initial foray into salt-curing meat. There I stood, brimming with confidence after consulting a few antique books, poised to preserve a fine cut of pork. I reasoned, how challenging could it be? It's merely salt. Well, 3 weeks down the line, I discovered the significant distinction between salt-cured and salt-obliterated. The Amish neighbors who instructed me in the correct curing process couldn't contain their amusement. You must handle the meat as you would a first date, they advised. Not overly forceful, just the appropriate measure of care. The science underpinning salt curing is quite fascinating. Salt functions like a club's bouncer, denying entry to troublemakers, bacteria. It extracts moisture from the meat, and without moisture, bacteria cannot thrive. Essentially, it transforms your meat into a bacterial wasteland. It sounds severe, but it's effective. Here's an astonishing fact. A correctly salt-cured ham can remain preserved for years without refrigeration. Years. Meanwhile, your supermarket ham spoils after a mere week in the fridge, while a cured ham simply rests, improving with age like a quality wine. The Amish employ a specific ratio for curing, 2 pounds of salt for every 100 pounds of meat. This isn't vastly different from contemporary recipes, except they aren't measuring it with kitchen scales while following YouTube tutorials. They've performed the task so often, they can sense when the amount is perfect. It's akin to their unique ability, though instead of flight or invisibility, they excel at preventing food poisoning in their families. You commence by rubbing the meat thoroughly with salt, truly working it in as if administering a spa treatment. Subsequently, you store it in a cool location, approximately 36 to 40 degrees, for roughly 28 days. During this period, something remarkable occurs. The salt gradually penetrates the meat, altering proteins and establishing an environment where harmful bacteria glance at each other and decide, nah, let's seek lodging elsewhere. But this is where things get intriguing. Different cuts require distinct handling. A common novice error is assuming a universal approach works. You cannot manage a delicate pork loin in the same manner as a robust old ham. As my Amish acquaintance puts it, treating all meat identically is like issuing everyone the same shoe size. Someone is bound to suffer. Did you know that during the American Civil War, salt grew so precious in the South that people excavated the dirt floors of their smokehouses to retrieve salt that had dripped from hanging meats over time? Talk about desperate measures. The Amish, however, continued curing uninterrupted. They had already secured their salt provisions. The genuine skill lies in the timing. Insufficient time results in spoiled meat. Excessive time yields something potentially usable as a doorstop. The Amish possess these incredible cellars where the temperature remains ideal year-round. Entering one feels like stepping back in time. The aroma of salt-cured meats mingling with the cool earth is an unforgettable sensation. Now, while salt curing is remarkable, it represents just one piece of the preservation puzzle. At times, a touch of smoke is necessary to truly finalize the preservation. The Amish understand this well, which is why most of their properties feature these amazing smokehouses that seem capable of recounting 1,000 tales. The initial sensation upon entering an Amish smokehouse is the scent, a profound warm fragrance that prompts your stomach to rumble, even if you've recently eaten. These modest wooden structures might not appear striking externally, but they are essentially flavor factories that would incite envy in any modern culinary expert. My elderly neighbor, Eli, who imparted his knowledge of smoking meat to me, possessed this compact smokehouse constructed by his grandfather in 1923. He cherished relating how his grandfather personally selected every piece of wood, asserting, "A smokehouse is like a musical instrument. If constructed correctly, it will perform the perfect flavor symphony." Quite lyrical for a man who primarily handled raw meat. Regarding wood, the Amish aren't indiscriminate about the logs they burn. They are exceptionally selective about their smoking wood. Hickory, apple, and cherry are preferred choices, but each family typically possesses its secret blend. It's their version of a family recipe, except rather than documenting it, they transmit it through oral tradition and practice. I once employed pine wood in my smoker, a significant error. The meat tasted as though I had licked a Christmas tree. Eli never let me forget that incident for months. Here's an astounding fact. The largest traditional smokehouse still operational within an Amish community can smoke as much as 2,000 pounds of meat simultaneously. That's comparable to the weight of a small automobile. And they accomplish this without any electricity or contemporary temperature regulation devices. The only product we endorse on our channel is a book by Claude Davis, a seasoned prepper, detailing 126 superfoods and preservation techniques from crisis periods like the Great Depression and wartime, which are otherwise unobtainable. We chose to promote his book because we represent the final generation capable of transmitting these techniques and knowledge of superfoods to our children or grandchildren. It would be tragic to witness the disappearance of this information concerning highly nutritious foods and preservation methods crucial for surviving crises. Additionally, you can find a book on herbal remedies by Nicole Aponte in their store. If you're viewing this on TV, you can search for our channel, Frugal Solutions, on your phone or tablet and locate the books via the link in our channel description or any other video description. It relies solely on skill, experience, and considerable patience. The smoking procedure itself is more intricate than one might assume. Firstly, achieving the correct temperature is essential. Too hot, and you're cooking rather than smoking. Too cold, and nothing transpires. The Amish gauge the temperature traditionally, using their hands. They hold their palm at the smoking level and count seconds. 5 seconds signifies perfection. I attempted this method once and nearly scorched my hand. Evidently, there's more to it than mere counting. They suspend the meat on enormous hooks, or arrange it across wooden beams, ensuring proper spacing for smoke circulation. The arrangement resembles some sort of meat chandelier. An Amish friend once quipped it's their interpretation of modern art. Meat in space, he termed it. The duration is also vital. Some meat smoke for days, others for weeks, and someone must continuously monitor the fire 24/7. In Amish communities, this evolves into a social occasion. Families alternate watching the smokehouse, transforming it into a communal gathering point. Children play nearby while adults exchange stories and maintain the fires. It's their equivalent of Netflix and chill, albeit involving more literal chilling and periodic meat rotation. Temperature management in a traditional smokehouse is a skillful practice. Maintaining the sweet spot between 70 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit is necessary. Excessive heat results in cooked meat that spoils rapidly. Insufficient heat allows bacteria to flourish. The Amish regulate this by adjusting small ventilation apertures in the smokehouse walls. It's comparable to playing a colossal meat organ. Each vent influences temperature and smoke flow differently. Care for something fascinating? The smoke not only imparts flavor, but also forms a protective coating on the meat's surface. Compounds within wood smoke act as natural preservatives, creating a thin layer that excludes bacteria while sealing in flavor. It's nature's own food wrap. Yet, perhaps the most impressive aspect is their ability to discern perfectly smoked meat merely by sight and a gentle touch. No sophisticated meat thermometers, no timers, just pure accumulated experience. I've witnessed Amish smokers who can determine the remaining hours a ham requires, solely based on its color and firmness. It's as if they possess meat ESP, and the flavor? Well, suffice it to say, there's a reason individuals travel hundreds of miles to purchase Amish smoked meats. Each smokehouse imparts its unique signature taste. You could blindfold an Amish farmer, and they could identify the originating family smokehouse simply by tasting a piece of meat. While smoking aids in preserving meat for months, sometimes a longer-lasting solution is required. This is where the craft of making jerky enters the picture, but that's an entirely separate narrative, equally captivating. The practice of drying meat is likely the most ancient food preservation method known. I'm referring to caveman-era old. You're familiar with those prehistoric cave drawings? Some actually depict strips of meat hanging to dry. It appears our predecessors were fond of beef jerky even before inventing written language. Talk about having one's priorities aligned. The Amish adopted this age-old technique and refined it into a science, although they'd probably chuckle at my description. I learned about their drying methods through trial and error. My initial attempt at jerky involved a sunny windowsill and an excess of hope. 3 days later, I had produced something potentially useful as emergency roofing shingles. My Amish mentor simply shook his head, stating, "You cannot hurry friendship or quality jerky." Here's something that might surprise you. A single pound of fresh meat reduces to approximately 4 ounces of jerky. This implies that the pound of beef you purchased would appear rather sparse on your plate after drying. But here's the remarkable part. Those 4 ounces contain the same protein content as the original pound. It's akin to concentrated meat. The Amish method for drying meat is systematic yet straightforward. They begin by slicing the meat with the grain, not against it as you would for a steak. The strips must be uniform, about a 1/4 inch thick. As my Amish friend John often says, if your meat strips appear to have been cut by a blindfolded individual on horseback, you're doing it incorrectly. You wouldn't credit some of the meat drying apparatuses I've observed in Amish communities. They construct these remarkable drying racks capable of holding hundreds of pounds of meat simultaneously. These racks are typically situated in a dedicated room or structure where airflow can be managed. It resembles a meat library, except instead of books, you have rows upon rows of drying meat. And believe me, the penalties for leaving your meat too long are far more severe than any library fine. Temperature regulation is vital. Between 85 to 95 degrees is ideal. Too hot, and you cook the meat rather than drying it. Too cold, and you're essentially operating a B&B for bacteria. The Amish assess this by touch and experience. They can discern the correct temperature just by entering the drying room. Me? I still rely on a thermometer and a calculator. Here's an amusing tidbit perfect for your next social gathering. During the California gold rush, dried meat commanded a higher price per pound than gold in certain areas. Prospectors would exchange actual gold nuggets for strips of jerky. Suddenly, those $8 gas station jerky bags seem quite reasonable, don't they? However, the true enchantment occurs during seasoning. Each family possesses its confidential blend, passed down through generations. Some opt for simple salt and pepper, while others employ intricate spice mixtures that would impress a master chef. One Amish family I'm acquainted with uses 17 different spices in their jerky recipe. They refuse to disclose the ingredients, but I strongly suspect love is the secret component, or perhaps garlic powder. The drying duration varies from several days to a couple of weeks, contingent on meat thickness and humidity levels. Throughout this period, the meat requires regular inspection and occasional turning. It's comparable to babysitting, except your charge consists of seasoned meat strips. And unlike actual babysitting, it's perfectly acceptable if these charges become tough and leathery. Want to know how to determine if dried meat is ready? The Amish utilize the bend test. If a piece bends and fractures cleanly, it's overly dry. If it bends like rubber, it's insufficiently dry. It should bend and exhibit small cracks on the surface, similar to a tree branch nearing its breaking point. I've observed Amish women testing dozens of pieces in mere seconds, as if conducting some form of meat symphony. Naturally, not all meat preservation necessitates such dryness. Sometimes maintaining a bit more moisture is desirable. This is where pickling enters the equation, and let me assure you, the Amish possess some pickling secrets that would make your grandmother's dill pickles seem tame. When most individuals hear pickles, they envision cucumbers relaxing in jars. But the Amish? They'll pickle nearly anything that doesn't attempt to pickle them first. I recall my first encounter with an Amish pantry stocked with pickled meats. It resembled a mad scientist's laboratory, except everything was, in fact, edible. You know what truly fascinates me? The history behind pickled meat. During the Age of Sail, pickled beef sustained entire navies through voyages lasting months. In fact, the British Navy relied so heavily on pickled meat that they employed official pickle inspectors. Now there's a job title absent from LinkedIn. The Amish perpetuated this tradition, while the rest of us were occupied inventing frozen dinners. My initial attempt at pickling meat was memorable. Let's just say my vinegar-to-salt proportion was significantly off, resulting in a concoction capable of stripping paint. My Amish neighbor Samuel glanced at my creation and remarked, "Well, if the meat proves unsuitable, you can always use it to clean your windows." He wasn't mistaken. That brine could have dissolved rust. Here's a fact that will astound you. Properly pickled meat can endure for years. Years. I'm referring to meat that remains safe for consumption longer than most individuals own their vehicles. The Amish possess pieces of pickled meat reserved for special events, much like how affluent individuals age wine, although I must admit, this pickled tongue is from 2019, a very good year, doesn't possess quite the same allure. The Amish pickling procedure is a refined art. They begin with a brine that essentially provides a spa experience for meat. Salt, vinegar, and spices all contribute. The salt acts as a gatekeeper, excluding harmful bacteria. The vinegar serves as the sanitation crew, ensuring no undesirable growth occurs. And the spices? They're akin to interior designers, enhancing the overall taste. You wouldn't believe some of the spice combinations they employ. Bay leaves, peppercorns, and mustard seeds are merely the starting point. Some families incorporate juniper berries, which apparently impart a Christmas-like flavor to everything. Others add hot peppers, creating pickled meat that functions as a dare. One family I know includes whole cloves of garlic. Their pickled meat could likely repel vampires across 3 counties. Temperature control during pickling is also critical. Too warm, and you're managing a bacterial resort. Too cold, and the pickling process proceeds more slowly than a sloth on holiday. The Amish store their pickling crocks in cool cellars where the temperature remains constant year-round. These cellars are like natural refrigerators, except they never require defrosting and lack that peculiar light that makes you wonder if it truly extinguishes when the door closes. Care to hear something extraordinary? The largest quantity of pickled meat I've witnessed in an Amish community was prepared for a wedding. They pickled sufficient meat to feed 300 guests. The entire community collaborated, transforming pounds upon pounds of meat into perfectly pickled servings. It resembled an assembly line, except instead of manufacturing cars, they were producing future sandwich components. Here's a pickling expert tip I learned the hard way. Never use aluminum containers for pickling. The brine's acid reacts with the metal, creating something that tastes like licking a battery. Don't ask how I know. Some memories are best left unpickled. The Amish have an ingenious method for determining if pickled meat is ready. They place a fresh egg in the brine. If it floats, the brine possesses adequate strength. If it sinks, more salt is needed. It's like a buoyancy test for your pickling solution. Once I attempted this and forgot the egg remained inside. 3 months later. Well, let's just say I discovered a novel method for making pickled eggs. But occasionally, when preserving meat for the truly extended haul, thinking outside the jar becomes necessary. That's when the Amish resort to one of their most intriguing preservation techniques, burying it underground. And before you inquire, no, they aren't simply tossing stakes into the soil. You haven't truly lived until you've witnessed someone excavating their dinner. Burying meat sounds outlandish, doesn't it? Like something from a zombie survival handbook. Yet, the Amish have transformed this prehistoric preservation technique into a precise science. Although I must confess, the first time I observed someone unearthing their winter meat provisions, I initially thought they were searching for hidden treasure. In a sense, I suppose they were. This isn't merely a dig a hole and cross your fingers scenario. The Amish utilize what they refer to as ground cellars or earth cellars, meticulously engineered subterranean storage areas that outperform any sophisticated refrigerator. And consider this, archaeological findings indicate humans have employed this method since before the invention of writing. Our ancestors weren't as primitive as we often assume. They simply had differing preferences in real estate. Allow me to share my initial ground cellar encounter. I assisted an Amish family in constructing one, and it felt like building a subterranean 5-star hotel specifically for meat. We excavated approximately 6 feet deep, lined the walls with stone, incorporated drainage, and ventilation. It was more intricate than my first apartment. My back vividly recalls every shovelful of earth. But as my Amish friend Jacob states, if you're unprepared to dig deep, perhaps stick to making sandwiches. Here's an astonishing fact. A well-built ground cellar maintains a nearly steady temperature between 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the year. During midsummer, when it's sufficiently hot to fry an egg on your car's hood, these subterranean meat vaults remain cool. Throughout winter, when everything above ground is frozen solid, they never dip below freezing. It's akin to possessing a natural thermostat that never requires battery replacement. The Amish adhere to specific guidelines regarding placement within these underground meat sanctuaries. Various meat types occupy different levels, resembling a subterranean meat condominium complex. Pork resides on one level, beef on another, and preserved meats are allocated their own distinct section. One family I know employs color-coded strings to identify different cuts. It's comparable to a filing system, except instead of documents, you're organizing protein portions. You wouldn't credit the engineering involved in preventing water infiltration. The Amish employ clever drainage systems that would elicit admiration from a Roman architect. They gently slope the floor, add gravel layers for drainage, and occasionally install ingenious air circulation systems that function without electricity. I once observed a ground cellar that had remained dry for 50 years, longer than most contemporary houses stay watertight. Fancy hearing something fascinating? During the Civil War, families in the South utilized this method to conceal their meat from marauding soldiers. They would bury their preserved meat so deeply and camouflage the entrance so effectively that soldiers would unknowingly walk directly over their dinner. The Amish still occasionally jest about hiding meat from the English, although nowadays they're merely concealing it from summer heat, not famished soldiers. Temperature monitoring within a ground cellar is an art. The Amish use simple yet brilliant methods to verify conditions. They might hang a piece of wool in the cellar. If it remains dry, the humidity is optimal. If it becomes damp, they recognize the need for improved ventilation. It functions like a primitive humidity gauge, doubling as a potential scarf in winter. The truly ingenious aspect lies in how they prepare meat for subterranean storage. They encase it in layers of paper, cloth, and sometimes straw, essentially creating a natural cooler. Each layer fulfills a function. The paper wicks moisture, the cloth provides insulation, and the straw adds an extra barrier against soil contact. It's akin to constructing a miniature meat mummy, except instead of preservation for the afterlife, you're conserving it for next winter's stew. But here's the crucial point. Not all meat is suitable for burial. You require meat that has already undergone curing, smoking, or drying. Attempting to bury fresh meat would be like trying to carry ice cream in your pocket. Messy, and ultimately disappointing. This leads us to another intriguing preservation technique, sealing meat in lard. Now that's a topic sure to get your attention. Have you ever observed someone packing meat in fat and thought, well, that's certainly unconventional? The Amish lard-sealing method resembles giving your meat a spa day, except instead of cucumber slices, you're enveloping everything in pork fat. It's unlikely to become trendy at luxury resorts, but let me assure you, it functions more effectively than any costly vacuum sealer available. The first time I employed this technique, I felt I must be doing something incorrectly. There I was, melting down lard like some sort of medieval alchemist, preparing to immerse perfectly good meat into it. My Amish friend observed me with an amused expression and remarked, "You're handling that lard as if it might attack you." Well, he wasn't mistaken. I was as apprehensive as a cat surrounded by rocking chairs. Here's a fact that might alter your perception of fat. During World War II, the U.S. government actually urged citizens to conserve their cooking fats for the war effort, as they could be utilized in manufacturing explosives. Fortunately, the Amish were more focused on preserving meals than producing dynamite, although I must concede some of their preserved meats possess an explosive flavor profile. The procedure is remarkably straightforward. You begin with cooked meat. This is vital. Attempting to preserve raw meat in lard resembles trying to swim through gelatin. Technically feasible, but definitely inadvisable. The meat must be thoroughly cooked, cooled, and as dry as your uncle's Thanksgiving jokes. Then arrives the engaging part, the lard immersion. The Amish are exceptionally meticulous regarding their lard. It must be flawlessly rendered, immaculately clean, and heated to precisely the correct temperature. Too hot, and you recook the meat. Hello, meat jerky. Too cool, and the lard fails to seal adequately. It's reminiscent of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, except instead of porridge, you're dealing with liquid pig fat. Want to know the truly remarkable aspect? A correctly lard-sealed container can maintain meat freshness for up to a year. A year? That surpasses the lifespan of most New Year's resolutions. The underlying science is actually quite elegant. The lard establishes an airtight barrier impenetrable to bacteria. It's like equipping your meat with its own personal force field. The containers they utilize are art pieces in their own right. Traditional Amish families frequently employ crocks passed down through generations, each possessing its unique history and associated stories. I've encountered crocks that have preserved meat for over 5 decades of family occasions. They resemble family photo albums, except instead of storing memories, they store dinners. Here's a technique I learned through misadventure. Eliminating all air pockets is essential. Any minute bubble between the meat and lard acts as an open invitation for bacteria. I once sealed a batch, feeling quite satisfied, only to return 3 months later to discover something resembling a failed science experiment. My Amish neighbor merely patted my back and said, "Well, now you understand what not to do." The Amish possess a clever method for verifying the seal's integrity. They wait until the lard solidifies, then invert the crock. If nothing shifts and no liquid escapes, you have succeeded. If anything moves, well, let's just say it's time to restart. I once failed this test rather spectacularly. Did you know lard can glide across a floor faster than a greased pig at a county fair? Storage temperature is also crucial. These lard-sealed treasures must be kept cool, but not so cold as to crack the lard seal. The Amish store them in root cellars, where the temperature remains stable, like a natural thermostat. Speaking of temperature management, wait until you hear how they approach preservation during the depths of winter. Those snow and ice storage techniques are sufficient to make a modern freezer seem inadequate. Allow me to share something about storing meat in snow and ice. It's the original freeze-drying process without the specialized equipment. The Amish method for winter meat storage makes your sophisticated chest freezer appear like a child's plaything. And unlike your energy-consuming appliance, this technique never results in an electricity bill. During my initial experiences learning Amish preservation practices, I mistakenly believed storing meat in ice was as straightforward as burying it in a snowdrift. How wrong I was. My first attempt culminated in a pack of extremely satisfied neighborhood dogs and one profoundly embarrassed individual, me. My Amish mentor couldn't suppress his laughter. "The snow is simply nature's freezer," he explained, "but even nature requires a reliable lock on its pantry." Here's a fact that will astound you. Prior to modern refrigeration, the ice trade ranked as the third largest industry in America, surpassed only by cotton and lumber. People would harvest enormous blocks of ice from frozen lakes, each weighing as much as 300 pounds. The Amish continue this practice today, treating ice harvesting as a refined skill. It's akin to farming frozen water, except the harvest occurs during the coldest periods. Ice harvesting is a communal activity that surpasses any neighborhood block party. Envision this: dozens of families congregated on a frozen pond at sunrise, equipped with massive saws and pike poles, cutting blocks of ice with the precision of jewelers. They possess a perfected system: some cut, some pull, some load. It resembles a meticulously choreographed performance, albeit one where everyone wears exceptionally thick socks. The truly ingenious aspect lies in how they store these ice blocks. They construct remarkable ice houses, not literal structures made of ice, though that would be quite cool, but specially engineered buildings designed to keep ice frozen well into the summer months. The walls are typically double-layered, filled with sawdust or straw for insulation. One Amish ice house I visited maintained frozen ice until September in Pennsylvania. Attempt that with your high-tech refrigerator during a blackout. Care to hear something extraordinary? The Amish can forecast their annual ice requirements based on the number of animals they intend to butcher. They've refined it to a science. One cow necessitates roughly this quantity of ice. A pig requires that amount. It's comparable to playing Tetris with frozen blocks, except failure doesn't just signify game over, it means no preserved meat. The layering technique they employ is brilliant. First, a substantial layer of sawdust, then ice, then meat, followed by more ice and more sawdust. It resembles constructing a giant meat parfait, though unlikely to be served for dessert. Each layer serves a purpose. The ice maintains the frozen state, while the sawdust offers insulation. It's essentially a massive natural cooler that would make your Coleman envious. Here's an expert tip I acquired. The ice blocks must be perfectly clear for optimal results. Cloudy ice contains air bubbles, causing it to melt more rapidly. The Amish assess their ice blocks by attempting to read newspaper print through them. If you can decipher yesterday's headlines through your ice block, you possess a quality specimen. I once tried to cut corners by using thinner ice, resulting in what can only be described as a very cold puddle of regret. Temperature management is paramount. The Amish monitor their ice houses vigilantly. They utilize clever ventilation systems that admit cold air while excluding warm air. One family I know employs a simple thermometer crafted from string and a pine cone. When the pine cone opens, it indicates excessive warmth, nature's own thermal alarm. You wouldn't believe some of the strategies they use to maximize ice storage. They'll pack snow between ice blocks to eliminate gaps, use specific types of straw for various insulation layers, and even position their ice houses to minimize direct sunlight exposure. It's as if they're engaged in a strategic game against Mother Nature, and surprisingly often, they prevail. And here's the remarkable conclusion. This method actually surpasses modern freezing for certain meat types. The gradual, steady freezing process avoids damaging meat cells to the extent rapid freezing can. Furthermore, when the meat thaws, it doesn't acquire that peculiar watery texture characteristic of freezer-burned meat. It's akin to the difference between fresh snowfall and the gray slush accumulating in parking lots. Observing all these preservation methods collectively, from the smokehouse to the ice house, one begins to appreciate how the Amish have mastered collaborating with nature rather than opposing it. Each technique possesses its appropriate time and application, its own cadence aligned with the seasons. It constitutes a comprehensive system, refined over generations, demonstrating that sometimes traditional practices aren't merely quaint customs. They are genuinely brilliant solutions that have endured the test of time.